Hey everyone, welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. My name is Kyle Yates and I am your host. I'm joined as always by Mike Tagliere, and you can find both of us on Twitter at KyleYNFL and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Tags, you get that cowboy hat yet?
No, I did not, and that's still never going to happen. I should never say never, but it's not happening. But yeah, it's a weird day, man. It's Wednesday, and we watched a football game last night, and then tomorrow we don't have a football game, which some people haven't realized. I was talking to my neighbor, and he was just like, wait, there's no Thursday night game? No, there's no Thursday night game. With the shuffling around in the schedule, we actually have time to ourselves tomorrow night. What are you going to do with yourself, Yates?
Probably work on football stuff. It's just now I'm playing catch up because now my schedule is pushed back from Tuesday stuff with the game. So probably be working, not going to lie. But anyway, hey, we have an awesome guest lined up for today's show. We brought him on. He's Adam Pfeifer of Fade the Noise Fantasy. He hosts the Fade the Chalk podcast, and he can be found on Twitter at @Pfeifer24. Adam, thanks for jumping on, man.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. Stoked to be here. I would probably be even more stoked if last night just didn't happen, but I appreciate the invite nonetheless.
We will get into that for sure and find out why Adam is a little upset about that. But hey, before we get into the conversation for today, I want to make sure everyone knows about the start-sit assistant with my playbook, So you guys, you got to know about this, okay? If you're playing fantasy football, you absolutely need to know about the start-sit assistant. You can find it, again, at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. You can get an instant recommendation on the best lineup for this week. You can view the percentage of experts who would start each player on your roster. You can edit and set your lineup for any league directly from within my playbook. And if you have multiple leagues, you can even view and modify lineups for all of your synced leagues in one place with our multi-league mode and submit your lineups to their respective league hosts with just a couple of clicks. It is a lifesaver. Play your best possible lineup and win your week by using the start-sit assistant at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. All right, guys, a couple of news items that I want to touch on before we get into the recap of last night's game. Melvin Gordon, running back for the Denver Broncos, charged with a DUI last night. Tags, I'll just throw this to you. What can fantasy managers expect moving forward from this situation? Is it going to be as far as Melvin Gordon's job is in jeopardy here with as a roster spot on the Denver Broncos?
It could be. They're talking about he actually went into the facility today, so he was charged with it. He went into the facility. They had a talk with him, and they sent him home. So therefore, he's not in the building on the day that they start putting the game plan into place. So if you have Melvin Gordon in your fantasy team, don't expect to have him this week. That's basically my advice here. And I posted on Twitter just a few moments ago. I said that I've seen Phillip Lindsay on some waiver wires, and I'm in very competitive leagues, but it's gotten to the point now where if you don't have a lot of bench spots in your league, teams have had to drop players like Phillip Lindsay because they're looking for players to start, and Lindsay has been obviously out for quite a while. So if Lindsay is out there, I mean, I don't know how much you guys feel like it, but I'm willing to spend a lot of waiver wire budget to get Phillip Lindsay if I can. I mean, I think I'd go up to 40%.
Completely. I think that if he is still sitting there, and there's a very good chance that he is, because again, he hasn't been healthy. He hasn't been active. So he could have easily been dropped by some fantasy managers in your league, and he could be sitting there. I would be very aggressive in trying to get him. Adam, what do you think there is? Phillip Lindsay, someone who, if he is sitting there on your waiver wire, he's looking at like a must add?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously haven't seen him play since week 1 in that Monday night doubleheader. And if you remember when he was healthy, it was like a full-on 50-50 split between Lindsay and Melvin Gordon. And I think before he actually left the game, Lindsay had one more carry or 2 more carries or so. So, even if Melvin Gordon, appeals this or, misses, if the suspension is more towards next season, Phillip Lindsay wouldn't be a guy that you would have added for nothing necessarily, because we know, I mean, I'm sure you guys will talk about it all week and everybody else will, but the running back position is already hurting in fantasy with all the injuries. And then you look at week 6 in particular with the bye weeks. I mean, no Josh Jacobs, no Alvin Kamara, no Chris Carson. And if you were depending on the 2 Chargers backs, I mean, they're all not available this week. So Phillip Lindsay, regardless if Gordon's there or not, is probably going to get, 10 to 12 touches. And if Melvin Gordon is not available, then you're getting the Melvin Gordon workload that we saw the last couple weeks.
Absolutely. We will keep everyone up to date as we find out more information there. But as Tag said, it's not looking good for his prospects for playing this Sunday against the Patriots. Let's move on here. The big news that dropped last night during the game, Le'Veon Bell released by the New York Jets. Let's talk about this for a second. And I mean, Tags, let's look at the Jets. Look at this from the Jets' perspective first. Okay, so what does this mean for fantasy for the Jets. I mean, is it really just Jamison Crowder at this point? Is the only Jets player that you're willing to go anywhere near?
Yeah, pretty much. As long as Adam Gase is the coach. And if they're letting go of players before they let go of Adam Gase, it kind of goes.
Ridiculous.
We heard a couple weeks ago before that Thursday night game, they said even if they lose that game that they were going to be retaining Adam Gase. Apparently they weren't lying. I mean, I don't know what Adam Gase has to do to get fired, but he hasn't yet, and it doesn't seem like it's anywhere close. This team has apparently given up on him, and that offensive line is terrible. Sam Darnold's out another week. Michael Perine would be the one that I would grab, I guess, just to see if there's anything there, because Frank Gore, we know what Frank Gore is. We know what he's not. We know that he's a guy that has scored like 2 touchdowns on like 400 carries over the last 3 years. Yeah, you don't want Frank Gore.
Yeah, I really don't want Michael Perine either.
No,
but at the same time, I mean, we just finished talking about, the running back landscape, and teams need starting running backs, So I think that if LaMichael Perine, he's worth the dart throw, but I'm not holding out hope necessarily. I liked him coming out of college, but this team is not going anywhere anytime soon. Let's flip the page here, though. Adam, let's talk about where could Le'Veon Bell potentially land from where he signs. So looking at it, I think it comes down to what does he want? Does he want to sign as a backup on a contender, or does he want to try to reset his market and push for one more big contract? So there's a wide range of outcomes here for Le'Veon Bell, but it's kind of one of those things that fantasy managers are kind of just hoping that he stays away from the guys that they're depending on, right? If he lands in a backfield, it's going to hurt the fantasy value of some other options. So let's talk about some of the landing spots here. Adam, do you have one or two that you're kind of eyeing, saying this would probably be a really good spot for fantasy?
Yeah, there's a couple that stand out, right? I mean, Chicago obviously makes some sense. I know personally, as somebody that's been, in on David Montgomery during the offseason and in-season, his uptick in passing game work. I mean, the last 2 weeks he's run, career high in routes, and then he's seen career high in catches and targets the last 2 weeks without Tariq Cohen. So, that would obviously hurt his overall ceiling now that he's becoming a viable pass catcher. But there's obviously a need there, not even just because. There was a need there. You can make the argument even when Tariq Cohen was there, because we know he wasn't getting 100 carries, and I'm sure as Tags knows, and you guys know, their depth at the running back position is arguably the worst in the NFL, and somehow that team is 4-1 right now, and they're gonna probably want to. Not even just the running backs, but outside of Allen Robinson, you don't have any consistency as a pass catcher. You can put Le'Veon Bell in and give him some carries and line him up in the slot. I think that would make a lot of sense. And then there's also teams would Detroit add another running back? Would everybody's gonna for the rest of time, apparently Tampa Bay is gonna be rumored to every running back. But I think Chicago would be the best logical fit if he wants to compete this year, because the Bears are off to a good start and the fit is there. If he just wants, I've also heard some people talking about the Cardinals. That would be kind of interesting. Kenny Drake's, they didn't commit to him fully in the offseason. He's on that 1-year deal. He hasn't played exactly, very well. And, Le'Veon Bell could, thrive in an offense led by Kyler Murray in that spread offense with DeAndre Hopkins. So those two would be interesting. But to me, wherever he does sign, it's going to hurt somebody, right? Unless he goes to even Miami. Myles Gaskin's been awesome this year. So even if he goes to Miami, which would be another fit, that's hurting Myles Gaskin, who's kind of emerged as a really strong fantasy play each week. So no matter what, unless he goes back to the Jets somehow, it's going to hurt somebody.
Tags, let's flip it to you. What do you think here with the Le'Veon Bell situation? We were talking about this in a Slack message, so I know that you've got some thoughts on here. What are your thoughts here with Le'Veon Bell?
I believe the Bears too. I think the Bears make the most sense for Le'Veon Bell, for the Bears, for everybody involved. I don't think the Bears are a contender. Obviously, Yates, we're both Bears guys. We both grew up in Chicago, but I think this team is very. I don't know how they're 4-1. I'm going to be honest, but David Montgomery is a guy that they talked about potentially. Well, I don't want to say they, because they never did. They felt like David Montgomery was the guy when Leonard Fournette became available. They didn't even approach that. They said we're not interested in that. That was while Tariq Cohen was still healthy. So I think they have to at least entertain the idea that Le'Veon Bell can come in and provide a stable passing presence in the passing game, because using Cordarrelle Patterson in that role is the dumbest thing I've ever done. They've ever done. Because anytime he goes in that backfield, you know exactly what's going to be happening. If I know, that means the opposing defensive coordinator knows. So Le'Veon Bell, the reason that it makes sense for him as a player, because he walks into a situation where he's more talented than David Montgomery. Granted, Bell's not the same player he once was, but he has a wider skill set, a better pass catcher, more respected, could force defenses to remain honest, because David Montgomery, I think he's seen stacked boxes on like 8% of his carries. So it's not that he's seeing loaded fronts. That's not the reason that he's not getting it done. So the Bears make a whole lot of sense. You know, you were talking about some other landing spots that I didn't necessarily agree with, because I felt like Le'Veon Bell as a person, what we've come to know him as he's, I don't want to say selfish, but he cares about himself. He cares about how people view him. He cares about a lot of that stuff, right? I don't think he's signing with a team that he doesn't have a chance to become the starter. The Bears, he absolutely has that chance to become it. Whereas if he went to a team like the Titans, he's the clear number 2 to Derrick Henry. You're not going to bench Derrick Henry for Le'Veon Bell. So there are a lot of teams that you can make a case for, but when it comes to Bell as a player, he's going to clear waivers because nobody's picking up that contract.
Right.
So when it comes to Bell as a player, if he's really looking for a situation that he can thrive, that he actually gets notoriety, I don't know if there's a better spot than the Bears.
Looking at, and that's why I brought it up at the beginning, was saying, like, what does Le'Veon Bell want? Does he want to sign with a contender and be like a complementary piece? Then I think that's where teams like the Titans, you know, make a ton of sense. Maybe even not the 49ers. The 49ers aren't going anywhere. You know, like the Bills, like these teams that he can walk and be the complementary piece. Because I think even in Chicago, with David Montgomery, even as like he's looked fine, but he's not producing the way that he should with this opportunity. But yet at the same time, like they're not going to take Le'Veon Bell off the street in week 6 and give him the 100% of the carries, 100% of the touches out of the backfield. They're just not going to do it. So I think that it depends on what he wants. Does he want to be that complementary piece on a contender? Then teams like the Titans make sense. Does he want to try to reset his market and try to get one last big contract as a running back? At his age, it's not going to happen. We can sit here now and we can say, even if he goes to a team like, let's just say, like you threw out, Adam, Miami. If he goes to Miami, he can beat out Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin has looked great, but he can still beat out Myles Gaskin and get, you know, the majority of the carries, show that he still has it. But yet he's not going to get a big contract at 28 years old, 29 years old, entering free agency next year. So I think it all depends on what he wants. I think you summed it up perfectly, Adam. No matter where he lands, it's going to hurt someone. And so I think at this point, we're just waiting. We're waiting to see who it's going to hurt, how it's going to affect players for fantasy. We, of course, will talk about it more and break it down as we get more news. But we got to move on, guys. Let's talk about the Tuesday night football recap. It sounds so freaking weird to say that. But Tuesday night football recap, we had the Titans put on a show against the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, 26 for 41, 263 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, only 4 for 18 on the ground. Tags, Josh Allen has been dominant this year. Are we concerned about Josh Allen after this performance?
No, I'm not concerned. It was a bad game. You know, it's the same thing as Jimmy Garoppolo. A lot of people are going to say, oh, did he come back too soon from that ankle injury? Did Josh Allen, was it a fluke for the first month? I think players have bad games. That's all I think it was. He didn't look as confident last night. I don't know why he's stopped running the ball. It's like he has to show off that arm all the time. Missing John Brown clearly affected him. Isaiah McKenzie, I believe that's who the ball bounced off of the chest on.
It was
on
Andre
the first
Roberts.
Place of the game. Andre Roberts bounced off his chest, and that wasn't an interception on Josh Allen. So I don't want to put everything on him. He was not great last night, but at the same time, I'm not panicking. He just needs to get back to running the ball, especially this week against the Chiefs. Yep,
completely agree. Let's move on to the wide receiver position, though. Again, you mentioned John Brown not in action. Cole Beasley catches all of his targets, 6 for 53. He's a fine PPR flex option. Gabriel Davis showed 9 targets, 5 for 58. But here's the big one. Stefon Diggs, 16 targets, 10 receptions, 106 yards. Adam, you mentioned you're a Bills fan before we started recording. How happy are you that you guys made that trade for Stefon Diggs in the offseason?
Every week I watch him play, I say to my friends and everybody that knows me, I say I would have given 2 first-round picks for that guy. I mean, he has been so ridiculously good this year, and I think that was a little bit of Josh Allen's problem last night, was because John Brown wasn't there and Stefon Diggs is so good. He was kind of force-feeding him the ball a little bit, but like at the end of the day, he's one of the elite receivers in this game, so it's hard not to. But yeah, like I completely overlooked the fact that Stefon Diggs can just be that good no matter where he goes, and B, like the Buffalo Bills. And a big reason why Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs have both been so good this year is Brian Daboll is literally just giving Josh Allen the keys of the offense. We've come to know the Bills as a run-first, run-heavy team. that relies on that and good defense. Their defense is terrible, but even before that, like right off the bat this year, Josh Allen was commanding this offense. The Bills are one of the pass heaviest teams on early downs in the NFL, and I don't think that's going to change. I think their skill right now is to just run 3 and 4 wide sets. Stefon Diggs, just getting open at will, and like he's just been unbelievable. So yeah, like after weeks 1 and 2, like a lot of people, because I'm sure you guys know, like Stefon Diggs was a guy going wide receiver 25 range a lot of the times in drafts. So a lot of people in fantasy drafted him, and they have other guys that are viable. But now, like especially after the first 2 weeks, that Stefon Diggs is in your starting lineup every single week.
I was going to phrase that to Tags in this way, like Tags moving forward. Stefon Diggs, low end wide receiver 1.
Yeah, you kind of have to think of him that way. I think I have him ranked as my number 13th wide receiver, so it might be high-end wide receiver. It's a borderline wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he's been dominant. Let's flip over to the Titans here. Ryan Tannehill, 21 for 28, 195 passing. Not crazy, but yet 3 touchdowns, and then also gets it done on the ground, 4 for 42 and a score. Ryan Tannehill, I didn't necessarily think that this was a fantastic matchup for Ryan Tannehill, where I was considering playing him. Tre'Davious White, missing this game played a huge role in that too. But yet Ryan Tannehill here. What are we thinking about Tannehill moving forward? Tags, low end QB1 or kind of this QB2, play him in the right matchups?
Yeah, I mean, it's weeks like the one that they have coming up where Derrick Henry against Houston should just like literally pound this team into oblivion. And Henry was a little upset a few times, had to be like being pulled out of the game. He kind of looked at the sideline like, why are you pulling me out? I know they didn't run the ball with extreme efficiency last week, but against Houston, they're going to have plenty of holes. And that's the area you have to worry about Tannehill, but he keeps getting it done. Even though there are those games, even though towards the end of last year, Derrick Henry was a monster, Ryan Tannehill's still been a top 6 fantasy quarterback ever since he took over the starting job. So I really don't know why we should start doubting him now. So, I mean, I'll say that he is a low-end QB1, high-end QB2.
Especially with A.J. Brown back in the lineup, 7 receptions on 9 targets, 82 total yards, and a score. Just dominant. Welcome back to the NFL, A.J. Brown. Jonnu Smith continues to get it done. 5 receptions, 40 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ridiculous production from Jonnu Smith this year, and then Derrick Henry, of course, finding the end zone twice. So those are the 3 main options that I'm considering moving forward as far as this receiving core and Derrick Henry on the ground, obviously, but A.J. Brown, Jonnu Smith. Outside of that, you really don't need to be looking at any of these other guys, even Corey Davis when he comes back. Okay, guys, let's move on to some of the starts here. We're going to be looking at the running back position here, and of course looking at the running back, half PPR ECR, ECR standing for Expert Consensus Ranking, taking all the rankings from the experts around the industry, putting them into an average here. So let's go to Tags here first, and then we'll go to Adam. For the running back position, let's look at a player outside the top 20 at the running back position who you were saying you guys should be considering starting this week.
I don't know why people continue to doubt Myles Gaskin. Like,
100%.
I do that. I basically look at weighted opportunity in terms of what they're getting in the backfield. And even though he wasn't getting the goal line touches, he has been getting the 16th most weighted opportunity among running backs. So that already in itself is just like, okay, this dude's got a solid floor on this team. You look at the matchup against the Jets. They're now 9.5-point favorites, which is just crazy for a divisional game. They are at home. All that bodes well for a running back that's getting 70% of the team's touches. Jordan Howard was inactive last week, and that's why Myles Gaskin did get a goal line carry. He scored a touchdown. So if we're getting that with Gaskin combined with that 16th most opportunity among running backs, why are people ranking him outside the top 24 running backs? I think he's a rock-solid RB2 this week, and honestly, it would not shock me at all if he finishes as a top 10 option.
He's the name that I wrote
Same
down.
here.
Adam, it sounded like you agreed. Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. Like, there's a lot of, like, why would you even want to – I understand the upside, but why would you want to gamble on the Rams running backs over Myles Gaskin right now or the Ravens running backs? And a lot of those guys are often ranked ahead of him. I mean, I'd start Gaskin over Kenny and Drake. Like what has he done? The guy is really involved in the passing game. He's literally top 8 in among all running back categories that you want for a pass-catching running back, right? He's 5th in targets among running backs, 4th in receptions, 6th in receiving yards, 8th in routes run. And then like Tag said – the The only knock on him has been the lack of goal line work. Jordan Howard, healthy scratch, and immediately you see Myles Gaskin convert that goal line carry into a touchdown. He also had 3 or 4 red zone targets in that last game against San Francisco. So, like, Matt Breida had, I think, 9 carries. Like, 4 of them came like with that game kind of out of reach, although it was kind of out of reach from the get-go. Mm-hmm. But Myles Gaskin is looking at, 16 to 20 touches a game right now. And if Jordan Howard is a healthy scratch again, and considering the Dolphins just did whatever they wanted to and Gaskin looked good, I don't know why he wouldn't be. You're looking at a guy who needs to be at least viewed as a top 20 running back and maybe even higher, just given the floor and now the potential upside that he's getting goal line work.
Yeah, 29 in half PPR ECR right now. I've got him at 22. Tags, where do you have him this week?
I have him all the way up at 16. Like I said, I would. You mentioned all those guys. I'd start him over David Johnson. I'd start him over Devin Singletary, over Kenyon Drake. Gaskin. I mean, the Jets are facing an average of 30.2 running back touches per game. So, like, I think it's a lock for him to get 18 touches. The Jets have been a good run defense under Greg Williams, but I think we're starting to see a team that's giving up on their coach. And we've seen this before. Yeah. We've definitely seen this before where teams have just given up because they're just tired of playing for that guy. And if there's no accountability by the front office, why should, you know what I mean? This team is going nowhere. So Myles Gaskin, again, 18 plus touches, that's hard to replace.
I think it completely comes down to, so far this season, I've viewed Myles Gaskin as like this high-end RB3 because he is not getting the goal line work.
Right.
Now he's getting that. So absolutely bump him up in your rankings. I mean, I was going to say I have him at 22. I could easily see the case to move him higher. I've got Kenyon Drake at 20 right now. Not feeling great about that. I could easily see playing Myles Gaskin over Kenyon Drake, like you said, Adam. So completely agree there. Let's go over to the wide receiver position. If we are all in agreement that Myles Gaskin is the running back that you need to be starting, let's move over to the wide receiver position, looking at someone outside the top 30 that we are considering a start here. Tags, who do you have?
I mean, I'm kind of abusing the system here, but I'm going to say DeVante Parker. I don't understand why he's ranked outside the top 30. Do you guys have any information? Like, did I miss an injury on DeVante Parker? And I've done this with Parker on this show before. I've said I don't get it. And then there was a start of the week segment where I was just like, I think you brought up Parker, and you didn't even need to say the rest. I was like, start Parker.
Right.
I don't know how you don't start Parker this week against the Jets. I mean, the Jets have allowed 200-yard receivers in the season already. Neither of those receivers even saw more than 7 targets. Those receivers were DeAndre Hopkins, Tim Patrick, both perimeter wide receivers. There have been 9 wide receivers who have totaled at least 52 yards against the Jets. That shows that Parker has a high floor. And then when you realize their best cornerback, Brian Poole, plays in the slot, which is where DeVante Parker doesn't play, on the perimeter, that duo they have on the perimeter there has just been burned. They've had to go to Lamar Jackson playing at cornerback right now. And well, he has allowed 11 of 13 passing for 204 yards and a touchdown in his coverage right now. So Pierre Desir is no better. There's a reason that the Colts moved on from Pierre Desir. They just cut his contract. They ate the money. This is a terrible secondary. I don't know why you would not start DeVante Parker. If you're not going to start him this week, trade him away.
No, the only thing that I can think of for DeVante Parker being he's moving up. I think when I looked at it this morning, he was at 32. Right before we started recording, he was at 31. He's now at 30. So he's just at this. He's moving up. I fully expect him to be up in the top 20 by the time that we get to Thursday, Friday, later on this week. But only 3 targets last week. So that's the only thing that I can think of that would indicate that he should be this low in the rankings. I've got him much, much higher than that. Oh, still 2 for 50 and a score last week. So, and again, you mentioned it, Adam, this game got out of hand pretty quickly. So they didn't even need DeVante Parker to win. So I think DeVante Parker absolutely was someone that I circled here. Adam, was he the name that you were going to bring up, or do you have someone else?
He wasn't, but I totally agree. I mean, Pierre Desir, like last time we all kind of saw him in prime time, it was that Broncos game where he had a couple good plays, but that was mainly because Brett Rippon just made some terrible throws.
Yeah.
And this guy's given up like 3 fantasy points per target in coverage. He has legitimately been terrible. And DeVante Parker is a guy who we've seen in the past have success against the elite corners in the NFL. So like this should be almost a cakewalk for him. I'm going to go to another team that just has not given us any reason to not play receivers against them, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, you're obviously starting DeAndre Hopkins every week, but Christian Kirk, he had this Jets matchup last week, which is a great one. I think he had 5 for 78, so you'll take that. And look, I mean, Dallas has just been so bad defensively, especially against wide receivers. At FTN Fantasy, Jeff Ratcliffe and a lot of the guys at the site, they're so incredible with these tools that they produce. And there's one that it's an advanced DVP tool, which shows where how many fantasy points teams are giving up to what receivers. So the receivers on the right side of the formation, the left side of the formation, and the slot. And Dallas has been bad against, pretty much everywhere, but third most fantasy points per game allowed to right wide receivers, which is where Christian Kirk lines up primarily. So he'll see the rookie Stefon Diggs, who, he's had some ups and a lot more downs. He's given up a lot of production and coverage this season. Third most yards in coverage, 2 touchdowns. Just, not been a great start for this entire secondary. And I think Kyler Murray and this offense should be able to do whatever they want. And they haven't been run blocking very well, which is a reason why Drake hasn't been good. And there really is only one decent part of this Dallas defense, and it's kind of their front seven. So if they're going to attack this defense, it's going to be through the air. And Christian Kirk is a guy that I really like if you're hurting at receiver this week. If you're replacing, the Seattle receivers, for instance, I would definitely look to go get Christian Kirk.
We talked about him on the waiver wire show, Tags, and I brought up Christian Kirk. I was pretty high on him because of this matchup. If you need a wide receiver this week, I was saying go grab Christian Kirk because I love the matchup. Adam illustrating it there for me with some great research there. So, Tags, what are your thoughts here on Christian Kirk? Do you think that he's someone that you can roll into your lineup as a solid flex play, or maybe even someone higher than that as a potential low-end wide receiver 3?
I think he has a sturdy floor. He has gotten at least 5 targets in 3 of the 4 games that he's played. The Cowboys as a team, like a unit as a whole, they've allowed 2.18 PPR points per target to wide receivers. That ranks as the 3rd highest in the NFL. I guess the question that I have with Kirk is, does Chidobe Awuzie come back? And if he does he go back to left cornerback where they kind of flip-flopped him and Stefon Diggs? If Awuzie is healthy and he goes back to left corner, that's where Kirk's running most of his routes, and that would be the worst matchup on the field. We know DeAndre Hopkins is going to go off. That's going to happen. It's just a matter of, is there enough production to go around? And considering that I have Kyler Murray as, tentatively, I have him as my number 1 quarterback this week, I think that there's enough room for production here. Even if Awuzie comes back, he's coming off a hamstring injury, which it could be re-aggravated. He could be at less than 100% because they're rushing him back because the secondary is just bleeding fantasy points. So I do think that he has a wide receiver 4 type floor, but I think that he can get into the wide receiver 3 range.
The only thing I'm worried about with Christian Kirk is that if Darryl Worley is covering DeAndre Hopkins, he might just get 100 catches in this game.
Yeah, that's how it's slated to be right now.
I know.
I mean, I don't know if they change things, but even if they put Diggs over on him, it's not going to matter.
The only way Christian Kirk doesn't have a solid game here is if DeAndre Hopkins literally just has a George Kittle Monday night game or Sunday night game against the Eagles.
Right.
It's possible.
It really is.
It is very, very possible. I've got Hopkins at 2 this week, and it's just I'm not questioning that at all. I feel like he can absolutely finish there. I feel like it's a lock. I love the call there, obviously, with Christian Kirk, and because I talked about him on the Waiver Wire podcast, saying that I'm absolutely a fan of Kirk this week. I'm going to go with Jamison Crowder here, guys. We look at Crowder, and especially now that we don't have the question marks of Le'Veon Bell, you're looking at this offense, you know that they're going to be throwing the ball because they're going to be playing from behind. And Jamison Crowder has done nothing this season to indicate that he cannot be a fine wide receiver 2 start. I mean, look at his finishes. He's only played in 3 games. He missed weeks 2 and 3, but wide receiver 7 on the week against Buffalo with 13 targets. In week 4, wide receiver 25 with 10 targets, went for 7 and 104. And then last week against Arizona, wide receiver 9, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 116 yards, and a score. So he needs the score to be able to get up into the top 12, but yet, guys, in ECR right now, where is he? 35. This is a low-end wide receiver 3, and I'm saying start him as more than that, because we just don't. He's getting the work, and even though it feels gross to roll out a Jets wide receiver, Jamison Crowder is going to be a safe wide receiver 2 option this week. I have him at 24 right now.
I don't even like Jamison Crowder most weeks. I talked with Dan about this on the recap podcast. He's like, "Why are you so low on Jamison Crowder?" I'm like, "I don't know. He's just not sexy, whatever." But I've gone through it, and I don't see how you rank him below wide receiver 28. He's a high-end wide receiver 3 at worst, considering the matchup this week.
Yeah, and that's not. Yeah, I didn't even talk about the matchup. I mean, it's just looking at the fact that he is literally the only option here. I mean, Jeff Smith. People are talking about Jeff Smith as an option. No, he's not going to take away enough work from Jamison Crowder that Crowder cannot be rolled out as a solid wide receiver 2. Adam, what are your thoughts here on Crowder before we move on to tight end?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a path to where your team is just really, really solid at receiver, and would you feel better benching Crowder, even though he has the floor, if you're needing upside, I get it. But like you said, he's given us no reason to not just continue to roll him out there. The quarterback change didn't do anything to hurt him last week. And like he's also scoring, like he's obviously known as a slot guy, getting those 6-7 yard catches, but he's been making some, bigger plays down the field this year too, which has been nice. And again, at the end of the day, Le'Veon Bell is not there anymore either. So I know Denzel Mims might come back, but we're not expecting him to get any sort of significant target share in this offense. It's going to be Jamison Crowder going forward. And just what you're getting every week. You're probably getting like 8 for 70 like every week, and like the upside games have been there as well. So 100% the main and the only sign of life in this Jets offense right now is Jamison Crowder.
100%. All right, let's move on to the tight end position here, Tags. Let's look outside the top 12. Who is someone that you are considering as a start this week?
I was shocked to see why is Mike Gesicki ranked 15th among tight ends.
Dolphins fan, huh, Tags?
I'm not a Dolphins fan. I mean, I'm a fan of attacking the Jets.
Yeah.
And it's weird that I did bring up Dolphins every single time here. It goes to show I like Ryan Fitzpatrick. Spoiler alert. But
it's going 4 for 4.
But honestly, I want you to know that every single time I like Gesicki, he blows up in my face. And then every time I fade Gesicki, he blows up. So it's like, I don't know, I don't want to jinx it here, but the matchup against the Jets, it's hard not to like him. I mean, there have been 3 relevant fantasy tight ends that they've played against through 5 weeks. They totaled, Jordan Reed caught 7 passes for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns coming back from the dead. Mo Alley Cox, who's not running any routes. I think he ran like 16 routes in that game. He caught 3 passes for 50 yards and a touchdown. Noah Fant caught 5 passes for 35 yards. I mean, the game script is the only thing I can worry about for all these players, but I'm looking at the top options. Like, DeVante Parker is clearly the top option in that offense. I know Gesicki played a big role last week, but, I mean, he just totaled, 91 yards against the 49ers defense that had, in their previous 20 games, they'd allowed just 4 tight ends to top 32 yards. He just dominated a really tough matchup. So it's like, you're looking at, it's not to say that Gesicki's like a smash, like 100% I feel confident saying that he's going to kill it with tight end 1 value, but when you're comparing him to every other tight end, like TJ Hawkinson, I don't even know, has he seen more than 5 targets yet? I don't think he has. Zach Ertz has been playing like garbage. I still say you trust him. Robert Tonyan, he's caught a touchdown every 2.8 targets. I don't. Evan Ingram, been terrible in that offense. He's someone that's really interesting this week because he is like the squeaky wheel. Does he get the grease? Because he said this week about the offense, they said, why are you struggling? He's like, well, I'm asked to do a lot of curl routes, and I'm not just running down the seam like I was last year. So I don't know if that's like a sign that, oh, we need to get this guy the ball, we need to stretch the field a little bit, or if they're going to say, you know what, screw you, Evan Ingram, we're going to put Caden Smith on the field. Eric Ebron, there's so many damn options in Pittsburgh. Can we say that we absolutely love him? So it's just, it's comparing Gesicki to all those other options, and I feel like he presents the most upside, and the targets have been there for him most of the time.
Yeah, definitely not a locked and loaded guaranteed option, but yet looking at the matchup, if you want to play the matchup, and I think that that's kind of where we need to be with these tight ends right now. I mean, you just listed through some of these other options. We looked at the guys that were ranked in the top 12 last week that just absolutely disappointed. I mean, 5 out of the top 12, tight ends combining for 7 catches for 48 yards or whatever it was. It was abysmal. So I think if you're looking at someone that you want to roll the dice with, Gesicki is absolutely worth considering. 6 targets last week, 5 receptions, 91 yards, and a score. Definitely worth plugging into your lineup if you are in need of a tight end. Adam, let's go to you here. Who is someone that you're looking at the tight end position?
So that Sunday night game against Seattle and Minnesota was really interesting for me for a lot of reasons, but finally started to see something from Irv Smith, and I was really high on Irv Smith in the offseason, mainly because my co-host on the Fade to Chalk podcast, Derek Brown, D-Bro, was super high on him, and he talked me into it. And through the first couple weeks, he was not being used at all, and it was really frustrating. But in that Sunday night game, he ran 31 pass routes, which doesn't sound like an immense number, but when you consider in weeks 1 through 4, he only ran like 60 pass routes. They clearly made it an effort to get him involved. He had a season high in targets. And, they need him because Justin Jefferson's been great and Adam Thielen is incredible, but they don't have anything at receiver or as any pass catchers other than those 2 receivers and Dalvin Cook. We know Dalvin Cook might not play this week. They ran 12 personnel at the highest rate of the season last game, and now he gets the Falcons, who have just been absolutely awful against tight ends this season. Sure, Ian Thomas didn't do anything. Ian Thomas isn't involved in the offense. cool. But we saw Robert Tonyan with 3 touchdowns. They're just giving it up to every single tight end they face. They've given up multiple touchdowns to the tight ends in like 3 of their 5 games. I think Irv Smith, there's been a lot of disappointment at tight end this season. And I think Irv Smith, given the sign we saw on Sunday night, could be somebody that you can pick up and chase an upside game, because like Kyle Rudolph only has 10 targets this year and Irv Smith has run more routes than him. So I think we're gonna continue to see Irv Smith play a little bit more, maybe line up in the slot a little bit more. So I'm really intrigued by Irv Smith this week, given the uptick in usage and the matchup.
Adam, you stole my guy and you made my argument for me, man. I'm right there with you with Irv
Smith.
He's always had the talent, but it's been the fact that he has not been involved in this offense. And now that again, you mentioned he was a clear part of this game plan. You look at the first 2 targets in that game, right out of the gate, it was Irv Smith on a slant. It got batted down. And then the second one, he was just completely a part of this game plan. And yes, absolutely, they need someone else outside of Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson to step up in this offense. And Kyle Rudolph, he can still be a factor in the red zone, but his day has passed. I think Irv Smith is now the future. So I think here's the thing. I said this on the Waiver Wire podcast. Like, if it was this, hypothetically, Minnesota was going up against Baltimore or a really, really stout defense, I would be saying probably don't take the shot with Irv Smith this week, right? But yet he's going up against Atlanta. And this is the week that if you're just done with Zach Ertz, you're so frustrated with Zach Ertz, Dalton Schultz, like these other guys who are just so week in and week out, just terrible, that have just so much volatility to them. Take the shot with Irv Smith. You can pick him up, stream him. Like, I think it could work out for you. Tags, what do you think here with Irv Smith, and especially against Atlanta?
I am 4 spots higher than consensus on him, so I am somewhat with you guys. I am a little hesitant because last week was the first time that we've seen a Vikings tight end, whether it be him or Kyle Rudolph, see more than 4 targets since week 13 of last year. It was a weird game. I think they were targeting towards the line of scrimmage a little bit more because that Seattle pass rush was somehow getting to Cousins. It was a very messy game with the rain there in Seattle. So I'm cautiously optimistic with Smith because we do want to see him play a bigger role. Against Atlanta, they don't have Dalvin Cook, and I don't think they're going to be running the ball 30 times or having their running backs touch the ball 30 times. So we should see an increase in pass attempts. So I'm with you guys. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I think that if you are, like I said, if you are in a spot where you need a tight end replacement for this week, that's why I brought him up on the Waiver Wire podcast. I'm sure that in some leagues, he's still sitting there. So I think that you can look his way. Let's go to the quarterback position and fly through this one, guys. A start at the QB position outside the top 12. Tags, are you going 4 for 4 here?
I mean, it's unfair. You said outside the top 12. I want to say Kirk Cousins, but he's not outside the top 12. I have Cousins at 6 right now.
I have him very high as well.
I just want to make a point that there's 2 guys that I would have said over Ryan Fitzpatrick before, because again, these quarterbacks are like Tom Brady and Kirk Cousins are both guys that I would start over Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I mean, I've already talked enough about the Dolphins. I'm going to screw myself 100%. I know it. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, I mean, if you were to go back to last year when they basically went to him on a full-time basis, this is like back, I think it's like to week 5 or week 6.
Week 7, I think. Yeah.
Where they went to him. He's been like the number 4 quarterback in fantasy football. He did have a stinker, a couple weeks ago where they talked about benching him. But against the Jets, I mean, it's the Jets. It's the Jets. Nothing but good comes from playing against the Jets. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy that I was going to bring up too. I mean, he's too obvious of an answer here. I think the other one that I would say, it all depends on what his health status looks like. But Cam Newton, he's sitting at 17 right now. If he comes off of the COVID list, then absolutely fire him up. He's at 17 again, like I said. But Ryan Fitzpatrick's the clear answer here. Unless Adam, you have someone else that you want to bring up?
Cam was one, but I kind of shied away from it just because of the uncertainty. But we've seen Denver give up a lot of production to on the ground at quarterbacks. Sam Darnold is actually still running on that Thursday night touchdown, by the way. The other one I was going to mention, and I had to make sure nothing happened last night, but Ryan Tannehill. We talked about him. The only concern I have is kind of similar to the DeAndre Hopkins mindset, but I just hope Derrick Henry doesn't have 700 rushing yards in this game. But, the Texans, when I'm looking at streaming quarterbacks that aren't like the top 5 that you start every week or whatever, I just want teams that don't generate a pass rush. Houston, bottom 6 in pressure rate right now. Their secondary outside of Bradley Roby hasn't been that sharp. And even without Corey Davis and Adam Humphries, like the play action with Derrick Henry. We saw it last night. It just makes his job so much easier, especially when A.J. Brown's back and Jonnu Smith in the middle of the field. And I think Benardrick McKinney is hurt now for the Texans as well. So, I just think Tannehill, super safe floor. And I think in this spot, if the Texans can put up points, could be a game where a sneaky shootout. So I like Tannehill. And if Cam does get cleared to play, I like him a lot, way above where he's ranked as well.
Absolutely. Let's go over to some of our sits of the week, fellas. Let's go to the running back position tags. I'm going to go to you first. Make sure that you are on half PPR and not standard.
Stop it.
Who do you have at the running back position within the top 20 that you're saying, if you can? And this is, I will say this first. This is a huge, you most likely cannot sit any of these players within the top 20. But yet, I think the way that we can phrase this is adjust your expectations. How about that? Because, again, the running back landscape, you're not going to be able to afford to sit some of these guys. So let's just say adjust your expectations. Who is someone that you're looking at here at the running back position?
Yeah, I mean, Darrell Henderson was up there, but now he's not. So it's kind of screwing my list I have here. I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to say Kenyon Drake. I think it's a real possibility that the Cardinals decide to start going with Chase Edmonds a little bit more. This game can go south on them against the Cowboys. It's weird because I think Arizona's favored by 2.5 in this game going into Dallas. Is that right?
Let me check.
Because that
you keep talking. I'll look it up.
Well, that's banana. I mean, that's what I'm seeing right now, unless I'm just blind. But yeah, I don't understand how that's happening. The Cowboys. This is all about basically expectations on Kenyon Drake. It's not so much the matchup against the Cowboys because the Cowboys just allowed Devonta Freeman to look fine. But it's more about Chase Edmonds earning more touches moving forward because Drake has accounted for 81.7% of the team's carries, but then you've seen 23 of the 29 targets go to Chase Edmonds. So is he going to start eating into that rushing total? It felt like Arizona was just trying to get Kenyon Drake going last week, and they kept using him inside the 5-yard line, let him push through that, and he finally got that rushing touchdown. It was nothing special he did on that run. I was a Drake supporter before this year. I think he looks bad. I think the offensive line's a problem. We know that, but I think he's a problem as well, and I am legitimately just concerned that he's going to start losing some of those touches, so I would rather start someone like Myles Gaskin over him.
Cardinals are favored by 2.5. Just FYI.
It's crazy.
That's really interesting.
Okay, so let's go over to you, Adam. Who is a running back that you're considering at least adjusting your expectations for?
Yeah, and it definitely helps after what we saw last night. But I'm definitely tempering expectations on Devin Singletary. Zach Moss has been practicing in full the last 2 Fridays and yet has not been able to play. So I'm cautiously expecting him to be back, and we know that'll sap any little goal line opportunities that Singletary will have. We've seen a lot of teams against the Chiefs this year just pound the rock and try to keep Mahomes off the field. Buffalo, like I talked about it, that's not their mindset this year, man. They are opening the playbook. They're throwing early on downs. And if Matt Milano and Trey White aren't back, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is going to do whatever he wants. He's probably going to do whatever he wants anyway. But if that's the case, I mean, Josh Allen, they're going to throw and throw and throw. And we know Singletary's pass catching role isn't massive. So for me, this just seems like a spot where he's probably going to max out at 12 to 13 touches if the Chiefs, put up points in this game, which they should. And that just kind of scares me off a little bit. So yeah, it's hard with all these running backs hurt and on bye to bench him. But again, a lot of people might have picked up Myles Gaskin or DeVante Freeman. I think I'd start those two both easily over Devin Singletary this week, for instance.
I'm right there with you. I think that Singletary, especially after what we saw last night, 11 for 25 on the ground, not super involved in the receiving game, so yet he doesn't offer a safe floor. And so I think in this matchup, he is probably someone that you need to be looking elsewhere if you can. And again, too, it's been super weird. I've been saying, I think Zach Moss plays. As we lead up to the games, I've been I think Zach Moss plays. I think he plays. Oh, wait, he's a surprise inactive. So I just think that, if Zach Moss comes back, it's going to be very hard to see how Devin Singletary returns RB2 value. I think he should be looked at as an RB3 at best. For me, guys, it's more so, I'm not saying to sit him, but yet Mike Davis all the way up at 7 against the Bears defense is a very, very hard sell for me to say that he's a locked and loaded RB1, yet a solid RB1. Now, he has been fantastic, and I am not going to dispute that in any way. He has looked amazing and went off last week against Atlanta. This Bears run defense is not the same without Eddie Goldman up the middle, but yet it can be beat. It can be run on, but yet at the same time, this is a very, very stout defense. I think the Carolina Panthers offense is going to struggle more than they have previously. So looking at Mike Davis all the way up at 7, that's just a little bit too high for me to say, yeah, start him confidently. He's more of a low-end RB2 in my rankings. He's someone that I want to kind of just temper expectations on. So wanted to make sure I mentioned him. Let's go over to the wide receiver position tags. Who is someone that you're saying in the top 30 that you should be looking to sit if you can?
I'm not going to play it safe on this one. I'm going to say Marquise Brown. He's up at wide receiver 16 in the consensus, and I think people are doing that because of what happened with Chase Claypool last week, but it was kind of a blip on the radar. The Eagles secondary has allowed 7.58 yards per target to wide receivers, which is the 4th lowest mark in the league. They've allowed just 11 yards per reception, which is the lowest mark in the league. So it's basically, if you want to beat them, the reason that the number 3 wide receiver has done pretty well against them in terms of Darius Slay is the top cornerback. They have Nickel Roby-Coleman, who hasn't been great in the slot. That's actually, by the way, Chase Claypool, where he did a lot of his damage last week, was in the slot. He scored 2 of his touchdowns in there. Marquise Brown only goes in the slot 24% of the time, so he's going to match up with Darius Slay for the majority of the game. Marquise Brown is a guy that has less than 50 yards in it's 15 of his last 19 games. So I understand that he has back-to-back games that have been actually, fantasy relevant, but he has been a boomer bust player, and I just don't think this matchup is as good as people think.
If he does not score, you are not happy that you start him. And so I think in this matchup, you got to play the percentages. Does he score? Now he can always break away a long play. He can always, Lamar Jackson can scramble and find him on a scramble drill. But yet at the same time, what are the percentage chances of that, especially when you factor in Darius Slay going to be guarding him? So to have him up at 16 is a little bit aggressive. I think he's always going to be this wide receiver 3 in my rankings, someone that has the boom potential, but then also has this bust potential that, like we've seen earlier this season, he's super hit or miss. So, all right, Adam, let's go to you, a wide receiver in the top 30 that you're saying people should sit if they can.
I'm not really sure why Michael Gallup continues to be kind of ranked where he is. He's had one good game, and he's being used as the vertical field stretcher in this offense, which that's fine and all, but now you have Andy Dalton, who, good for the Cowboys for making that signing in the offseason, because I loved it when it happened, completely. And now, obviously, unfortunately, with Dak out, it's massive for them. But with CeeDee Lamb just looking like a superstar in the slot, why would you not look to him almost every play, especially Amari Cooper, who's going to not be, he might be covered by Patrick Peterson, but he was shadowed by James Bradbury last game, who's been really good. I don't think he's going to be as little involved as he was last week. And it's Michael Gallup, if he doesn't haul in, and I know he had those 2 deep completions to seal the game, that was great to see. But for me, as a top 24, 25 guy, I just don't see it because it hasn't happened. And Michael Gallup is probably going to see some Peterson in this game too. We know he doesn't play in the slot at all, and he plays around 50% left and 45-50% right, so he'll play on both sides of the field. That way, when that's the case, he'll see Patrick Peterson. So I just don't see it with him. There's a ton of receivers I'd rather play over Michael Gallup this week.
Let me put that to the test, Adam. Brandon Cooks, obviously super, just disappointing 2 weeks ago, comes back, has a phenomenal game last week. Would you play Brandon Cooks over Michael Gallup this week?
I think I would. I saw a quote from Deshaun Watson saying that they made an effort to get him involved after his goose egg. So maybe that was a one game thing, but I tend to lean towards the side of, they need Brandon Cooks in this offense. And I just think, you don't like getting a 0, obviously, but I don't think either of these guys have massive floors. But, if you had to tell me whose is higher, Brandon Cooks probably has a higher target ceiling than Michael Gallup, given their offenses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. Tags, would you do that too? Would you start Brandon Cooks over
I
Michael
actually
Gallup?
have them right next to each other at 37-38, so it's really a toss-up for me. It's something that I might finesse as the week goes on. But I'm with you. I'm low on Michael Gallup. I'm at 37 when his ECR is 26.
Yeah, I've got him at 34, so I'm right there with you guys. One of the guys in this range, too, that I want to bring up is DJ Moore. DJ Moore obviously had a phenomenal game last week and broke, people are saying, okay, well, he finally broke out and he could be the player that we think he, has always had the talent to be. Obviously, 4 for 95 and a score, but a lot of that yardage came on that big play and running down the sideline against the Atlanta Falcons defense. Now you're going up against the Bears defense, who, yes, I just talked about the run defense is, it can be run on. The pass, not happening. They are shutting down opposing wide receivers this season. So DJ Moore, if he had come out and gotten 10 targets, last week and Robbie Anderson saw like 8 or 7, then that would be something that would have me a little bit more optimistic. Ranking him all the way up at 18 is where he is in ECR right now. Guys, I've got him down at 31. He only saw 5 targets last week. He is still not involved enough in this offense, and again, an offense that I'm projecting to struggle a little bit this week against the Bears defense. He's just not someone that I can roll out there with confidence. Tags, what do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to sit him, but I agree with you. I'm lower on him than the consensus. I have him 7 spots lower, so I think it's difficult to sit him for a player like Laviska Shenault or even a Mecole Hardman or something like that, but I am lower in general on DJ Moore this week.
Adam, would you consider selling high on DJ Moore? Because I think that his value is sky high right now.
Yeah, so I write a stock report article at FTN Fantasy every Monday, and Robbie Anderson has been in that article in terms of like stock up for like 3 of the 5 weeks because he's like, it's not just this week or last week. He's been the wide receiver 1 all year long because I think we overlooked the connection between Robbie Anderson and Matt Rule, like Temple connection, and the fact that he is literally running the complete opposite route tree that he ran in New York. He's the guy running the slants. He's playing in 1 wide receiver sets. Like, DJ Moore is the field stretcher. Like, I think if you have like needs at running back and DJ Moore's your wide receiver 3 or something like that, like absolutely look to do it, because is DJ Moore going to be just downright dreadful this year? I don't think so. He's too talented. There's going to be games where Carolina has to throw, but I don't think it was, a knee-jerk reaction in week 2 to say Robbie Anderson was the wide receiver 1 in this team, and it's clear as day now. I mean, he has double-digit targets in, I think, 3 or 5 games. He's been the guy, so.
Yeah, he has just been producing like nobody's business. So I just don't think that there's enough here for DJ Moore. And like you said, he's not going to be, a consistent outside the top 60 wide receivers or anything. He's going to have value, but yet at the same time, to have him all the way up at 18 was a little bit too aggressive for me. So I wanted to point that out. Let's go to the tight end position here, Tags. There's a clear and obvious name for me here in the tight end ECR, but who are you going with?
Well, again, this one moved a little bit on me. You said outside top 10. Is that where we're going?
I'm sorry, outside the top 12.
See, you ruined it again for me. Wait, this is a sit inside the top 12.
Yes.
So it works. Okay. Dalton Schultz is someone that I'm a little worried about this week. Coming off last week's game, he had 3 targets. I mentioned that at the end of the week 4 game, he came up like kind of gimpy. And I was wondering if something came of that. He was not listed on the practice report, on the injury report. So I kind of wondered, I was like, maybe I over-exaggerated it or whatever. But for whatever reason, he didn't get the targets. And then Andy Dalton comes in. We know that the passing volume is probably going to come down for this team as a whole. Arizona is no longer, unfortunately, the giving tree that it was last year against tight ends, because we just played every tight end against them. But this year, I don't think they've allowed a single tight end over like 52 yards. So Dalton Schultz he's not a locked-in start for me.
Yeah, I think that's the right mindset with him, that he's not a locked in. Now, he can absolutely produce because, I mean, you look at the tight end landscape, and if you get more than 3 catches, you're probably going to be in the top 12. But looking at, Dalton Schultz too, Andy Dalton had that connection with Tyler Eifert for so long, so that it could be this thing where we could be proven wrong, and he has, an inclination to target the tight end position. Dalton Schultz sees. But as far as a locked and loaded, I agree with you, Tags. He's all the way up at 7 right now. I have him a little bit lower than that. I'm not confident in starting him this week. Adam, let's go to you. Who is a tight end inside the top 12 that you are considering sitting?
If it wasn't for Tyler Higbee's 3-touchdown game against the Eagles, where would he be at in the ranks? He is not, and it's not even his fault. It's just the Rams' running attack has been really good, and that's what they've been sticking to. They are calling run at the second highest rate in the NFL, just under 52% of the time. And Tyler Higbee, before he broke out last year, he was their blocking tight end. And Gerald Everett being back has taken away from his workload and his touches and his routes. They're giving Gerald Everett like carries inside the 5-yard line. Tyler Higbee on a team that's running the ball at one of the highest rates in the NFL. As a result, he's blocking. He leads all tight ends in the NFL in run blocking snaps, and he's 30th in routes run at tight end. Like, for me, if you need your tight end to be running routes, it's that simple. And can Tyler Higbee score 2 touchdowns on 2 play-action passes inside the 10? Absolutely. And he's still going to have a roll down there. But if he doesn't score, the floor is like incredibly low. I mean, we've seen it.
Yeah.
So against the Niners, Tags talked about how good the Niners defense has been against tight ends. They held Zach Ertz to what was it? 4 catches for 9 yards. The only touchdown they gave up was last week. It was like a 3-yard touchdown to Adam Shaheen. So they've been elite against that position. I just have no confidence in Tyler Higbee right now with how this team is running the football, and they're going to continue to do that.
I'm completely there with you. I mean, you mentioned that one game, right? In week 2, he saw 5 targets, which was his season high, 5 receptions, 54 yards, 3 touchdowns. He obviously finished as the number 1 overall tight end that week. But outside of that, week 1, tight end finish of 21, week 3, 20, week 4, 32, week 5, 29. So, I mean, you're rolling him into your lineup as nothing more than a touchdown-dependent tight end, too.
Yep.
So, for him to still be ranked up at 11 is very, very aggressive for me. I'm not crazy about starting him, and I'm looking to sit him if I can. The name here, guys, for me is Zach Ertz, and it pains me to say I am very frustrated with Zach Ertz this year. I have him in several places, but I mean, we can't be starting Zach Ertz anymore. He can't be in your starting lineup with what we have seen, and now especially going up against Baltimore, I think that this offense is going to struggle even more than it has this season. Baltimore has just been on fire from a defensive perspective. So looking at Zach Ertz, again, I just talked about Tyler Higbee's fantasy finishes. Let's talk about Zach Ertz's. I mean, 15, 21, 7, where he saw 10 targets in week 3 against Cincinnati, 7 for 70, but then 27, 43. Like, the past 2 weeks have just been atrocious for Zach Ertz. 6 targets, 1 reception for 6 yards. He just does not look the same on the field. And I think that it can certainly bounce back any given week. And I hope and pray that it does, because we need Zach Ertz to be good for fantasy football. But right now, he cannot be in your starting lineup. He's 5 in ECR. I have him at 14 this week. I'm just not confident plugging him into my lineup. Adam, do you agree here with Zach Ertz, or are you still buying in?
I want to buy in. Like, I know Travis Fulgham broke the slate last week, but it's like they still. We'll see if Alshon and Deshaun Jackson get back. Mm-hmm. My question is, like, if you have Zach Ertz in your team, like, who exactly are you confident benching him for? Right, like,
right.
That's the tough part. Like, if you like Mike Gesicki, like, I think at this point you kind of have to play Gesicki right now over him. But other than that, like, are you gonna pick up Robert Tonyan with Davante Adams back and feel comfortable? I don't know. Dalton Schultz, like, it's such a tough spot for Zach Ertz, because you would still imagine him to be incredibly involved with the Eagles' offense right now. But it's just, what does he have, 5 catches for 14 yards over the last 2 weeks? It's such a weird situation. Right. Luckily, I traded him away 2 weeks ago. I am very happy about that. Although my tight end now is Hayden Hurst, so it really isn't that much better. but yeah, it's a tricky situation.
Tags, what are your thoughts here? I know that you're still kind of on the like buying into Zach Ertz, and again, I'll phrase it like the same way that Adam did. I'd want to buy in, but I just can't right now.
Yeah, he's still leading the league in routes among tight ends. The Ravens have been a good defense, but at the same time, they've already allowed 3 tight ends to post 50-plus yards against them, including David Njoku and Jordan Akins, 2 athletic tight ends. And I've mentioned this before. Ertz is better with Alshon Jeffrey in the lineup. If you go through and look at his game logs, like do the game splits between those two, when Jeffrey is in the lineup, you would think it's like, oh, Ertz is going to get more targets. His target floor is higher. It doesn't matter. He's not very efficient with his targets when Jeffrey's out of the lineup. Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson are going to pull coverage away from Ertz, where teams don't get to key in on him as much. I do believe there's a bounce back, and I don't think that the Ravens, this is the one position that I'm not really scared of against them.
All right, let's the quarterback position. We got to fly through this, guys, really quick. Who is a sit for you within the top 12? Did we did the starts, but we haven't talked about the sit. Is there anyone that really jumps off the page? There isn't really for me.
I mean, it's really tough, but I would say that Jared Goff is someone that I'd be worried about a little bit. He has not thrown more than 32 pass attempts in any game this year. The 49ers, even though their defense is just decimated right now, they have, since the start of last year, they've allowed just 3 quarterbacks to hit more than 7.4 yards per attempt, which means basically you need attempts against them, unless you're Ryan Fitzpatrick, because he's just the GOAT. But Jared Goff, with the lack of passing attempts, it's definitely worrisome.
Yeah, he's at 12 right now. That was probably the one that I was going to point out. Adam, anyone that jumps off the page to you?
Yeah, Goff was the guy. Like, when I first looked, Matt Ryan was 12, and then I wrote, like, definitely him. So I'll just add that he has 1 touchdown pass since the first quarter of week 3.
Yeah, it has not been great for Matt Ryan. I would sit him if you can, too. Let's go to the sleeper segment here, guys. Let's look at someone outside the top 36 running backs that we can say that you should consider plugging into your lineup as a sleeper option. I'll just throw mine out here really quick. It's J.D. McKissick. Actually, J.D. McKissick moved up, so never mind.
He was mine, too, actually.
He just skyrocketed. So let's go, Tags. Who do you have while I scramble and try to figure out who the heck I'm going to pick up now?
I'm going with DeAndre Swift, dude. DeAndre Swift, coming out of their bye week, I think this is a chance to implement him more in the offense. And the Lions are a team that they're not going anywhere fast. They drafted Swift, obviously, at the top of the second round. He has been involved in the passing game. There was one game in there where it was just like his role was actually non-existent. But outside of that, he's actually been used in the passing game. If they come out of this bye and involve him a little bit more, I think you're going to start to see an RB3 in fantasy circles. So I'm willing to take that shot on him during bye weeks if you're like in a real pinch.
Okay, Adam, what about for you?
All right, so McKissick was originally mine, and I saw he moved up, so this is going to be...
But I think McKissick is out there. I think a lot of people are wondering about McKissick if they could start him, and I think you guys are correct in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, like, a lot of people point to the fact that Alex Smith, he got all his targets from Alex Smith, but he still had, like, 3 of them from Kyle Allen, and Kyle Allen was not, they're not throwing down the field. I mean, 3 of his 13 attempts were behind line of scrimmage. So, and then I like McKissick a lot, and then I'm going to add Frank Gore, just because.
Oh God, stop!
That feels great.
Listen. I know it's bad, but they were giving him.
Make it stop!
They were giving him a good amount of work with or without Le'Veon Bell. Now he's fully out of the equation, and it's just the matchup. I know revenge games for Frank Gore don't really count because he's played with like 5 teams, but Miami's also been vulnerable against the run. They're allowing 1.6 rushing touchdowns per game. Their red zone defense has been bad. Frank Gore could get you like an ugly 17 carries for 60 yards and a touchdown. And again, like I said, Kamara, Jacobs, Chris Carson on bye, Barkley, McCaffrey hurt. Like, people need running backs, and there aren't many running backs getting 15 carries. I think Frank Gore is getting that this week.
Yeah, I mean, desperation play at best for me, but he's at 51 right now. I expect him to move up with the Le'Veon Bell. The other name that I'll throw out, Mike Boone. If you were looking for a desperation bye-week fill-in, I mean, looking at the opportunity here in this Atlanta and Vikings game, Alexander Mattison, 20 carries, but then there's still, with how much the Vikings run the ball, there's still some opportunity here for Mike Boone if Dalvin Cook does indeed miss this game, which I fully expect him to. So if you are desperate, I think you can roll out
Fantasy Championship PTSD. Kyle.
Yeah. Let's go to the wide receiver position outside the top 50. I'm going to bring up Tim Patrick, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. You're looking at, if KJ Hamler does indeed miss this game, I mean, Patrick's 66 in ECR right now. I think that he is a starter in this offense, and it looks like Drew Lock is going to be back this week. So I think that you can roll out Tim Patrick there as a flex play, maybe even more than that. So, Adam, who's your guy here for the wide receiver position for the sleeper?
This one really hurts me to say because I hate that he's this far down, but he has not been good this year. It's Marvin Jones, man. Look, everybody knows Marvin Jones is going to have a 6 for 80 and 3 touchdown game at some point. Why not this week against Jacksonville, who their defense is, below average to begin with, and last week they were without Josh Allen on the D-line, Myles Jack in the middle, and CJ Henderson, and then DJ Hayden's on IR. So they are really banged up in the secondary. They allow the most points per drive in the NFL. I like Stafford this week. I like the Detroit offense. And Marvin Jones is like, he's obviously on the wrong side of 30, but he's not this bad. He's going to have a big game eventually. Why not this week?
So it looks like we just lost Tags. His power just went out.
Yikes.
So, So Tags fell off the ship here. So we're just going to move into a segment here, Adam, looking at the players here. For who should I start? Okay, so I'm going to just throw out some names here for you that are back-to-back-to-back in ECR. And let's just say if you have all these options available to you, who would you be going with? Looking at the quarterback position of Gardner Minshew, Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins, and Tom Brady. Out of that group, who would you be looking to start this week? Who's the highest in your rankings?
That one is very close. I believe I would go Stafford, mainly because I think Tampa Bay can get a lot done on the ground with Ronald Jones against Green Bay, and that could take away from Brady. Plus, we don't know Godwin's status. And the same with Gardner Minshew. DJ Shark didn't practice Wednesday. That concerns me. Stafford, Kenny Galladay's back. His deep passing numbers have improved each week since Galladay's been back. I talked about Marvin Jones and this Jacksonville defense, so I'm going to go Stafford.
Yeah, that's probably where I'd be going as well. Let's go over to the running back position, I'm just going to throw some guys that are in this like low end RB2 territory. So let's look at Darrell Henderson. Chase Edmonds is all the way up at 23. So I don't know where you have him, but I don't have him that high. So Darrell Henderson, Chase Edmonds, Devontae Freeman, and Mark Ingram are all back to back in ECR. Who out of that group would you be starting?
It's crazy. I'm going to go Devontae Freeman. His first game with the Giants, they kind of eased him in. And then last week against Dallas, he kind of dominated the snap share, got the majority of the running back carries and goal line work. Washington's defense has a solid front seven, but they've been banged up as well. And Freeman's just very involved right now. So I think you should feel better about Freeman's expected volume than Darrell Henderson, especially when Sean McVay has already said that Cam Akers is going to have a larger role this week.
Yep. Yeah, it's concerning with Henderson. You never know what you're going to get, even though the potential is there, right? He certainly has a high ceiling, but Freeman brings a solid floor. Let's look at the wide receiver position. Again, looking at these guys who are kind of in this range of a low-end wide receiver 3. We have T.Y. Hilton all the way up at 31 again. Chase Claypool, Mecole Hardman, and let's throw Jamison Crowder there. John Brown is the next in line, but he has the injury concern. We just don't know his status yet. So T.Y. Hilton, Chase Claypool, Mecole Hardman, and Jamison Crowder. Who would you be going with?
I'm more of a risk-adverse guy, so I think it's easily Crowder. I understand Claypool's got the hype. I really want to pick Mecole Hardman because I love him, and if Tyreek Hill sees Trey White, Mecole should be able to torch Josh Norman with his speed. Yeah. So it's really close. I'm starting Mecole in a lot of leagues, but I wouldn't feel comfortable just yet starting him over the floor of Crowder.
For sure. All right, let's move on to the tight end position here. Tyler Higbee, Hayden Hurst, Jimmy Graham, or Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper coming off a 10-target game. Who would you be going with there? Tyler Higbee, Hayden Hurst, Jimmy Graham, or Austin Hooper?
It's definitely not Tyler Higbee.
Right?
It's close between Hurst and Hooper. Hurst is running a ton of routes, but Hooper's target share has been improving each week now.
Yeah.
I'm going to lean Hayden Hurst. I understand the production hasn't been there. Julio might sit again. Like, he's running so many routes. He's getting, like, around 6 targets per game in an offense that should be throwing a lot each week. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but Hooper's close.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Hooper moving forward, I'm optimistic. I mean, has the talent and is now seeing the opportunities here. So, guys, if you are in the same spot where you're looking at some of these guys that we talked about, if you've got multiple players you want to compare to help you in your lineup decisions, you can do so for free with our Who Should I Start tool at fantasypros.com/start. You can compare up to 4 players at each position or across multiple positions. So please check it out at fantasypros.com/start. All right, let's just do one last thing here before we get you out of here, Adam. Let's put our names next to these guys. The start of the week, we don't even need to do it by position. Let's just go one player that you were saying you're putting your stamp of approval on, start of the week, and then we'll do that for the sit of the week as well.
A little bit of an asterisk, but I'm assuming Dalvin Cook's out. I woke up this morning and inserted Alexander Mattison into a handful of lineups, and it felt great. So if Dalvin Cook does get ruled out, which it looks like it's happening, you play Alexander Mattison and you move on.
Oh, my word, completely. I've got him as a top 5 back this week. Who would you have for a sit of the week?
I think it's pretty easy for me to get away from the Eagles. So it's like Zach Ertz. Like I mentioned, it's hard to sit him, but like Zach Ertz, Carson Wentz, anybody on the Eagles except for really Miles Sanders, I don't see how you can play them right now. I know the production wasn't terrible against the Steelers, but I think the Ravens defense will perform much better this week than the Steelers did last week.
Yeah, Zach Ertz is my sit of the week as well. You can't be playing him right now, especially in this matchup. I will go with Jamison Crowder as my start of the week, though. Looking at his opportunity in this offense, it's very difficult to find anyone else that you can give targets to in this offense, and you know that they're going to be throwing the ball. So I will go with Jamison Crowder. That is going to do it for today's show, guys. Adam, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to come chat with us, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a blast.
Yeah, remind everyone where they can find and follow you on Twitter if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at apfeifer24. And yeah, all the content up at Fade the Noise, FTN Fantasy, and me and D-Bro's podcast, Fade the Chalk. It's been fun, and we had tags on, and I'd love to have you on as well, Kyle.
Absolutely, man. Would love it. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode, guys, from Mike Tagliere, who, again, fell off the ship, and Adam Pfeifer. I'm Kyle Yates, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to tell us what you think in the comments section below. And while you're there, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.